work always gets done because one of the core skills I've had the benefit of picking up is how do you approach a problem you know very little about? How do you say, here are the steps to solve it? How do you get buy in? And then how do you go do it? And that's the same everywhere.
On today's episode of the Fahrenheit podcast, Radhika Duggal joins us. Radhika is the Chief Marketing Officer of MLS, Major League Soccer, and Soccer United Marketing, where she is leading the charge to grow the league's global fan base and reimagine how soccer shows up in culture. A lifelong marketer with experience that spans startups, Fortune 100s, and the classroom, Radhika brings both creative vision and strategic depth to everything she touches. From JP Morgan Chase and Pfizer to Super.com and Deloitte, she has spent her career building brands that truly resonate. A New Yorker, a lifelong learner, and a believer in the power of sport, Radhika is redefining what it means to lead with purpose, connection, community, and fun in the world of professional sports. Welcome, Radhika. It is so wonderful to meet you and to have you here with us today. I know that really I want to kick right into gear because you have probably one of the coolest jobs in the world of marketing. And I probably think like most people would agree with me when I say this as the CMO of Major League Soccer. I don't know how much bigger and more universal it gets. So I really want to dig right in and just start by asking you, like, how does it feel to have a job that has so much impact on humanity and truly this universal love that people have for sport?
I was thinking this morning while I was working out, this is probably going to be among the happier times in my life.
Wow.
Thinking about how incredible it is to be in this seat, in this role with my amazing team. How fortunate I am then on the non-work side of life to have health and a wonderful marriage and a wonderful daughter. I'm just thinking, and to be young enough to enjoy it. And I was just reflecting this morning on what a wonderful time this is. And so as I think about your question more specifically, it feels really fucking good.
Oh,
I feel
yeah.
really fortunate to be in this seat. I am grateful for the opportunity every day. And I know it's an opportunity for me. And my job is to do the best I can to earn it every day. So really positive things.
I just want to take a moment and say how grateful I am for you sharing that. I think certainly for myself, and I can assume that many other individuals out there can appreciate and relate to this. But I think sometimes it's very hard to let those moments land, those moments of really like recognizing not just, the things that are going wrong, but the things that are going right. And just like taking a moment to like stop and pause, like it's such a powerful feeling. And so first and foremost, like good for you. And what an amazing moment it is to recognize that. Tell me a little bit about some of the best parts of the job. Like what are some of those things that are just having you be like, wow, I am in the right place at the right time?
There's probably 2/3 things. First and foremost, my team is awesome. We've got really talented marketers, which I think you do see in a variety of industries. We've got a team structure that has specialists with deep knowledge in leadership positions, and I learn from them each and every day. And then we've got a number of folks that are a little bit more of generalists, really hungry and excited to learn that work for that group of specialists. And I learn from them every day. I can't say enough good things. I'm going to stumble over my words because I'm so happy with the team that we've built and are building. So that's the number one thing. The second thing I think that's really interesting, particularly to me, my career has spanned things like financial services and healthcare, a little bit of consumer products. I've never worked on a product besides this one that is about unity and joy.
Mm-hmm.
And how cool is that? Especially in today's environment where everything is divisive, soccer is not divisive. Our brand is about fun.
Mm.
And I just, as I reflect back on my career journey, I've never had that experience. So I don't take it for granted. And I'm just really excited about that opportunity. Coming to work is fun because the product I get to work on is about fun and entertainment and unity. And the last thing I'll say is it's really cool having worked in different stages of different businesses and in different market cycles. It's so cool to be part of a league that is growing and on the rise and a sport that's growing in the US, you learn from the growth because the growth is really fast paced and messy and you don't do everything right. And I'm really comfortable with that, by the way. We can talk
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah.
But I love it. I love the pace. I love the messiness. And so I would say, first and foremost, my team and the people we get to work with every day. Secondly, the product that's about unity and joy. And last, this idea of being part of something growing that's exciting.
Tell me a little bit more about not doing everything right. You just said, let's dig into that a little bit. Such a powerful statement, as you're even talking about something that brings you excitement and joy in this role. The ability to move quickly, the ability to not be perfect at everything. Talk about what that experience is like.
So I've had the benefit of working across three really different kinds of industries. I've worked as a management consultant. And when you're a management consultant serving clients, everything has to be right.
Oh, yeah.
Every period has to be right. Every slide has to be formatted appropriately. And you've got to know the job better than your client, which is a very hard thing to do from the outside looking in.
Mm.
You've got to be perfect or as close to perfect as humanly possible. Similar, I've worked in really big companies that are highly regulated. And that combination of big company and highly regulated means there's a lot of scrutiny, especially on marketers, because marketers create outward facing stuff that consumers see and react to and believe. And I've worked in pharmaceutical products, super highly regulated. I've worked in financial services, particularly serving less affluent customers, super regulated. And there you've got to be 100% perfect because your product is a life or death thing, or it's dealing with someone's money. And that's really important. I love the opportunity to take myself and my work a little bit less seriously,
Mm.
to let my team take risk, to step out of the weeds and say, you go run with that and let's see how it goes. And it'll work or it won't, but we'll learn from it. There's something so freeing and exciting, but also something that drives us to learn because we can say 80% is enough. We'll try our best. We'll learn a lot and we'll take that learning on to the next thing. I feel like there's something really exciting about being in a place that not only can tolerate a little bit of risk in that way,
Mm.
but encourages it and encourages it as the foundation of growth.
You've had such a already long and experienced career, and to be sort of in what feels like this new world of experimentation, of trial, in a way you've never been able to before by nature of the categories you've been in. And also, I think in a place of fun, right? Like you talked a bit about creating a brand that is about unity and connection. So what is new for you? What are you experiencing for the first time in this role, right? Which is really different in many ways than the ones that you've had in the past.
I mean, I've got to be honest, soccer is new.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen a soccer match until the weekend before I started at MLS. I don't remember if I had shared this story previously with our class, but I thought when MLS reached out to me on LinkedIn that it was a joke
Mm.
because I had no context. It was like someone pranking me. So the sport is new. And I gotta tell you, like for something to be new, it's very cool to have the opportunity to learn about soccer from scratch. One of the things I lean on my team the most for is that. One of the things I lean on other leaders in the
Yeah.
org. And by the way, my being new means I get to attend soccer matches to learn. I get to watch soccer on TV to learn. It's cool.
Yeah.
And so I'll say that's probably the biggest newness for me is the industry. It's a lot to learn. It's complex and really understanding the ins and outs it's very complex. But it's a great way to challenge myself.
Some might find it hard, maybe scary even, to go into a new industry or a new category, especially in such a senior role. Were you at all afraid? Was that scary for you? And how did you overcome that?
I tend to be nervous before I start any job.
Yeah.
I overcome that by calling my dad and saying, Dad, I'm nervous.
Mm.
Says, well, you've done this before, so you'll be fine. And he's always right. But I think like more practically, everyone's nervous about new things, but I'm more excited about it.
Mhm.
Yes, a little bit like, oh my God, how am I going to learn? But I think having had the benefit of having the foundation of being a management consultant,
Mm.
your entire job is to learn. Your job is to learn your client's job in a month, 2 months, and be able to give really good advice on the topic. and go from one project to the next project to the next project, your skill set becomes learning how to learn. I think having that foundation has really helped me. The other thing that's really helped me is I've now worked in a number of different industries. I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in consumer, I've worked in financial services, I've worked in big companies, I've worked in little companies. Work always gets done because one of the core skills I've had the benefit of picking up is how do you approach a problem you know very little about?
Mm.
How do you say, here are the steps to solve it? How do you get buy in? And then how do you go do it?
Mhm.
And that's the same everywhere. So, yes, a little nervous. Yes, I do the thing I always do, which is call my dad and say, Dad, I'm nervous. But then if you just take the step back, you're like, okay, a job is a job. Marketing is marketing. It's the same few steps.
Yeah.
You always figure it out.
Do you think that there's a problem that you're trying to solve in this role in particular or in this category?
I don't know if it's a problem as much as we have a goal. We have a goal to drive fandom and to grow the number of fans that love Major League Soccer,
Yeah.
our clubs, and our athletes. And that is the number one thing me and my team are focused on. And I would say across the enterprise, that's our enterprise-wide goal.
You talked with so much excitement and passion, about your team and about the power of your team and how impressed you are with your team. And you broke it down by specialist and generalist. Tell me a little bit about, as a CMO, what you look for when you're hiring, right? And when are you looking for that specialist? What might that be? And when are you looking for more of that generalist skill set?
What you look for when you hire depends on the role. And in
Hmm.
my opinion, given that specialist generalist breakdown, depends on the level of seniority. For a more senior role, you definitely typically need someone with functional expertise. If I am hiring, we recently hired a CRM leader and she's stellar. She's stellar because she has deep CRM knowledge,
Yep.
knowledge in the job function, knowledge in the platform we use. And I just had an hour and a half long meeting with her this morning. And I was like, wow, no one has broken down what we have and don't have in our database the way you have. So when you get to that director, senior director, VP, those folks, in my opinion, you want someone with deep subject matter knowledge that's better than you are
Yeah.
in that area. And for me, that's in some areas not a low, like not a high bar, because I don't have that deep CRM knowledge and that knowledge of the tool that we use in the way that she does. When you're looking for that kind of associate manager, maybe even senior manager level, I particularly am looking for that person who wants to learn. I think people are smart and can learn anything, especially as they're a little bit more junior. And I want someone that wants to show up every day, do the job, raise their hand and say, oh, you got a side hustle for me? I want to do that job too because I want to learn. And for me, I think this desire to learn this desire to hustle is the biggest thing, especially in our industry. And I'll tell you one difference between here and working at a bank, for example, we run. Things change. It's live entertainment. We go fast. And so you got to have folks on the team that are excited to run and learn and pivot and change. And so I think as I think about hiring, we need specialists that have deep subject matter expertise at the more senior levels. And we need people who are excited and hungry to build the business at the more junior levels.
How do you operate and how do you operationalize speed, right? Like this ability for you at the MLS to move quickly, to pivot, to be on top of culture. How do you operationalize that as a head of marketing with your team? Like, what does that actually look like?
So I think there's four things. I think first and foremost, you hire for it because sometimes we see, and we just had this instance, you see candidates who are incredible on paper, who do wonderful and thorough case studies, but they haven't operated in an environment that has this messiness and this change and this pivoting and this speed. And we
Hmm.
cannot hire those people as much
Yeah.
as we can them. And by the way, sometimes it's so painful because on paper they are perfect. So you hire for it. You hire for someone who you know has the capability to pivot and live in the messy middle kind of space.
Hmm.
The second thing is you are honest and you are continually honest. It's really interesting and hard because so often I see my leaders saying, this is the way to do this thing. And I know they are right, but I know I'm giving them half the time, half the resources, So we have to pivot and adapt our approach. And this morning, I essentially said, hey, wait, hands up. I got to pivot. We got to pivot and adapt our approach. I know it is hard, but we have to.
Yeah.
And having that hard conversation and having conviction in it, I think is really important. The last thing is, I make sure to have enough regular touch points with my team members. One on ones are important, never canceling, having that scheduled time. It's fine to move it if you have to, but have the time. Never let it go. That's the most important meeting you'll have of the week. Having a team meeting, having the space for communication so that everybody understands the pivot. The worst thing is you got half your team pivoting and the other half running in the opposite direction, and it's incongruous.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that you are cascading down information to everyone and there are the right spaces for communication is also really important. So I think for me, it's the three things. You hire for it, you own it, and you're really honest, especially when you're pivoting, and you make the space and the time for communication.
Communication is so important. I can imagine that in a team working one at the speed that you're moving, and then two also working across geographies, across teams, across events, right? All of the things that come into the world of the MLS. Communication is just like so critical. Obviously, you are experienced and seasoned when it comes to communicating. But how do you train your team to communicate as effectively to you and up and to each other? Right? Like really ensuring that that communication is being taught.
I'll say to their credit, my directs are really good at
Mm-hmm.
communication. And I think it's because I'm about a year in, so we're starting to form as a team of people who wants each other to succeed.
Yeah.
You want the people next to you to succeed. You're automatically inclined to give them as much information as you can. When I started it, I do all the things, right? We have the weekly meeting, we have the one-on-ones in Slack. Every time I go to a meeting, they're not in, I type up the notes and I send it.
Yeah.
That's just automatic. This is what you do. But I will say for my leaders, I'm really lucky. I feel like they want me to be as successful as I want them to be. Some of the need to train goes away because when you're in it together, you
Mm-hmm.
tell the other person.
Yeah.
You want to communicate. You value the other person's perspective. So telling them is natural. I feel really, really fortunate about that. I will say we also have, and we're not putting it to good use as much as we did in prior roles. In prior
Mm,
roles, I created this like, here's what it looks like to be a leader on this team, or here's what the culture of the team is. And we literally had documented this.
mm,
We have it here as well. I don't know that we use it as much as we could or should, but that I think if we needed to be really explicit on what communication looks like, that would be a way I've seen success doing it in the past. You document it, you share it with your leadership team, you say, this is what we're going to adopt, and you grade each other at mid-year and year end on communication as part of the
mm.
job.
Communication is so inherent in some ways with trust, which is arguably in part why you have such good communication with your team. And it's funny, I echo everything you're saying. I feel so blessed. Fahrenheit is almost 40 people now. We have a group of leaders that I really feel are in it with me and very controversially with whom I call my family all the time. And I know it's not a commonly used term and there's a lot of debate around whether you should, but I am so dedicated to their own growth, both personally and professionally. And it is such an honor to have those kinds of relationships in the workplace, especially in the workplace where we spend more honestly of our time than even at home. And so I really resonate with what you're saying. And I would agree. I feel so equally lucky. Outside of communication being a tool or a signifier for great leadership, it sounds like you have great leaders. Like, tell us, what does a great leader look like? What would that document say in terms of, what it takes to be a great leader?
I actually wish I could pull it up in fast enough to
Yeah.
read from it to you because it's well thought out.
Yeah.
It comes down to one overarching thing in my mind, which is care
Mm-hmm.
for the people around you. And then if you have care for the people around you, both their professional growth as well as them as people, a lot of things naturally cascade out of that. So if you have care for the people around you, you naturally will find opportunities to communicate.
Mm,
Meeting will cascade down information you and only you hold, and you'll cascade it up as well. Number two, you'll find the way to elevate the work of the people on your team. We try really hard to make sure we get three folks in front of my boss once a month
mm,
to share their work so that he can hear from them. We share with our executive team quarterly, here are some wins, and we write out the names of the people who are responsible for that work, no matter how junior or how senior.
Mm-hmm.
Communication, elevating people's work, giving really clear and concise feedback is a third thing that is on that list and that I think is really important. And feedback is constructive or it is positive. I think constructive feedback, though harder, is probably even more important.
Yeah.
If you really care for someone, your job is to help them grow. And feedback, constructive feedback delivered effectively, is a gift. Really focusing on those couple of things helps to make a good leader.
Mm-hmm. Was there a moment in your career, a catalyzing moment where you received feedback that maybe in the moment was tough to hear, but changed how you operated as a marketer?
Yeah, 2009. I was becoming a manager at Deloitte, where I was a management consultant for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean I was becoming a people leader. Someone sat me down and said, listen, it doesn't matter how the members of your team get to the outcome. As long as the outcome is the right outcome, their process to get there can be different from your process to get
Mm,
there. Their timeline, as long as you meet your deadline, can be different from your timeline. As long as the outcome is the same, you don't need to micromanage the process. And I have really, really, really taken that to heart in trying to find people that I know will get to the right outcome. And by the way, it's beneficial for me to learn a different process or a new way of getting there. I don't need to micromanage the process. We just need to make sure together we get to the right outcome. I have really, really taken that to heart and tried to do so.
For me, that is one of the hardest things as a leader to do. And I think part of it is now being at an agency versus being at an organization where part of the experience that we are building and creating is our process, right? And is the way of doing things. But recently, two girls on my team wanted to try something different. And I was honestly pretty adamant. I didn't agree with the way. And I said, look, if you guys really believe in this and you trust that this is the right approach, let's try it and go for it. And they were 100% right. The way that the client responded and resonated with their way was wonderful. Like truly couldn't, it was like a picture perfect email we got back responding to the work. And for me as a leader, something I realized is also the power of being able to admit when you are quote unquote wrong. And there's other ways you can frame it, but I actually called them up and was like, you guys, I was wrong. And how exciting is it as a founder, as a CEO, as a leader to in some ways sometimes be proven wrong? And I think about that often because part of allowing other people to do things their way is trust. Part of it is also, in a certain sense, having a learning mindset, this mindset that really allows you to have continuous learning and really be open and curious to other ways of doing things. I'm curious as a teacher, right, which you are, as a professor, how do you bring sort of that consistency of teaching to the work that you do as a teacher, but also allow for the diversity of thought that students bring every day into school?
I think this stems from trust. If you have the right people around you, you know that your way isn't the only way. And in
Yeah.
fact, now as I look around my leadership table and our leadership meeting is directly following this, I
Hmm.
know I am the least knowledgeable in many of their areas of expertise. And that's a great feeling. I don't need to be the most knowledgeable.
Yeah.
In fact, if I am, something is wrong.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with the right folks and having trust to say, you tell me, you got to educate me and convince me because oftentimes I have to represent your thinking somewhere
Hmm.
else you're not in. And I don't want to stumble over that. So you have to educate me and convince me and help me understand. But it doesn't have to be my way. And I really think if it has to be my way, I will have limited bandwidth. I'm not a leader. I'm just dictating what my approach is. You can't win that way. You can't scale that way.
In your mind, what is the job, right? As a direct correlation to what you just said, what is the job of the CMO?
It's a couple of things. And maybe I'll answer this by saying in a couple of years, here's what I want to have accomplished during if I
Yes.
look back. First, from a people perspective, I want to help my team grow.
Yeah.
I want to see the people on my team excelling and I want them to see their work out in the market, which is that's what all marketers want. I want them to have outgrown me.
Mm.
And I think they will because they are stellar. From a process perspective, I want to help the league continue on its transformation and being this fan first, consumer focused enterprise that goes to market as an enterprise together in key moments, league and 30 clubs going to market with the same message, because that's how we're going to drive significant coordinated fan growth.
Yeah.
And then from a technology and data perspective, I want us to be growing our capability to be using cutting edge data, cutting edge technology to drive that fan growth. So I think the job of the CMO is to be able to bring all three of those things to life with the end goal of driving fan growth.
Mm. Talk a little bit about fan growth. I think what a fun opportunity that is as a marketer to help think about and to drive and to develop. What have you learned about the league consumer? What have you learned about your audience? And that what are those sort of again inputs that are helping you to think about the strategy moving forward?
You're right. What a fun
So
job, right?
fun, yeah.
It's so interesting to think about because every marketer's job is to drive customer growth,
Mhm.
but the product is really different. So, for example, my job is to drive fans of Major League Soccer. In the past, my job has been to drive credit card users
Mhm.
or bank account users. And it's just a different mindset. Very tactically, what I've learned throughout my career is that there's a couple of really important steps to driving that fan growth.
Mm.
First, as you've mentioned, you've got to deeply understand consumer behavior, great behavioral data, and great research. Second, and this is why having a stellar creative and brand team is really important, you gotta have incredible creative. It's really hard to break through right now. Gotta have creative that does that job. You have to have the right technology and data to make sure the consumer's getting the right message, right time. And as part of that, you need to have the channel expertise, right? What's the right channel? How do you orchestrate channels? And then you have to have end-to-end thinking. I think very often teams or companies have folks that think about their sliver of the problem as opposed to the whole customer experience. And that's the marketer's job. You are the customer's advocate no matter where they are in the journey. So I've learned that you need all of those things to even get to the starting line of the race to cut through to that customer. And what I've learned, particularly about our customer at Major League Soccer, or particularly in this live entertainment environment, really different than others, is there are really different levels of fandom. Listen, I'll be honest, there wasn't, you weren't like a super fan of a JP Morgan Chase checking account. Weren't, right? Like you can be a super fan of Major League Soccer and some of our players in our clubs, or you can be like a casual fan. And our job is to really understand where each person is whether you like funnels or not,
Yeah.
wherever they are in their customer journey, and drive them towards that super fandom. And it is hard in live entertainment. Things change in the moment. You have to react in the moment. Think
Mhm.
about what it means to react in the moment at scale. You need data, you need technology, you need AI driven creative, you need creative driven by humans. It's really exciting to learn how to orchestrate that customer journey in a live entertainment space. It's really different.
Mhm. How do you even measure fandom, right? Like if you're thinking about the funnel through this lens of super, super, super fan, right, to like lightly interested in sport, where and how are you even measuring that real, true, deep, that deep knowledge of someone's level of fandom?
Yeah, we've got a number of different ways. First and foremost, what's most useful for marketing is we have metrics sort of at every stage of the whether you call it customer journey or funnel.
Yep.
And we're measuring everything from sort of awareness and interest in Major League Soccer
Mhm.
to first party. We have your first party data, we can contact you, or we have your third party data. You're a social follower, et cetera, all the way down a funnel or through a customer experience. And we're pretty diligent in trying to understand where each of those metrics are at any given time period with a goal of reaching a certain aspiration. We also really think about what does fandom look like across the enterprise, league, and club, and who's a general fan or what we call a non-core fan and a core fan who really like has that fan love.
Mhm.
And we've got ways of essentially parsing out or distinguishing between the two.
When you think about the super fan and you think about creating loyalty, right, or frequency, what do you think is the sort of emotional thread that ties those super fans together and that you at MLS are really trying to speak to and connect with?
We really think about the energy that a consumer gets when they experience our product.
Mhm.
We recently did about 6 months worth of brand positioning work last year.
Yeah.
And where we landed talking to consumers, looking at competitors in the entertainment spaces, The energy you feel when you
Mhm.
go to a match in one of our stadiums, when you watch on broadcast on season pass, for example, that energy is distinct and unique. It feels different than if you are going to a Major League Baseball game, watching an NFL game, or watching something on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's uniquely ownable. It's fun in a way that other sports don't have. It's uniquely fun. We have supporters groups who are waving a flag for 90 minutes throughout the entire match and chanting throughout the entire match. It's an experience unlike anything else. Caught up in this feeling of growth and momentum, which consumers love, the idea they get to be shaping the trajectory of their clubs and their teams is really exciting to fans because we're growing and they get to be in it during the growth moment.
Mhm.
It's welcoming in a way that other leagues may not be or other sports may not be. And I say that for two reasons. It's affordable.
Mhm.
Afford to bring your family forward to a Major League Soccer match. It's
Yeah.
really hard to do that with other sports. And we have the most diverse product on the field. Our players come from 80 countries, 80 plus countries. It's incredible to watch. And then the last thing is it's really good soccer. When we think about what are we trying to achieve, we want consumers to feel that energy, and that energy is made up of that fun and entertainment, that momentum, that feeling of welcoming and belonging, and great soccer on the pitch.
So much of marketing, really good marketing, is taking such an intangible feeling and really bringing it to life and thinking exactly like that rich idea of the moment when you're at the match and the fans are screaming and the players that are cheering for, the team that you're cheering for, like, makes the goal. It's like that moment, how you really wrap that up. That is where like marketing magic is truly made. You had mentioned innovation earlier and kind of creating sort of like newness for MLS. What does innovation look like in this field and in this category? And where are you thinking about in terms of the future of marketing innovation for the MLS?
I think there's a couple of things that are incredibly important. First, it's leading with brand and the right brand for the moment.
Mhm.
We're in this big period of growth. So, really taking that step back last year, as we did, and assessing is our brand strategy, is our messaging what we believe we need to take us through the next 5, 7, 10 years?
And
Leading
that's why
with,
you did that work, right? You
yeah,
talked about deep brand positioning work. Yep.
that's right. Leading with the brand, threading narratives through everything we activate so that we are
Mhm.
all marching towards the same story is incredibly important. The second thing for us, and I think this is a unique thing to Major League Soccer, protecting the authenticity of our clubs. No matter what happens, no matter how we grow, our clubs and their brands are like this love letter to the cities in which they come from, and they make us special. The collection of the 30 club brands and the authenticity that they bring are, in a lot of ways, a collection and a representation of what it's like to be in America and Canada.
Mhm.
And protecting that at all costs is really important. And then the last piece is using data and research to ground everything that we do, making sure that as marketers, we're really focused on research, in market testing, and pivoting when we understand the results. So for us, innovation is in a lot of ways the nuts and bolts of marketing. Lead with the brand, protect what makes you special, and use data and research and technology to guide the way.
In order to move as fast as you do, and in order to pivot, right, and evolve, you have to start with those insights and with that data. And you are a teacher of consumer behavior. So tell us a little bit about like what does consumer behavior mean? And as a marketer, what is it that you're really looking for? What are the critical things that you should be looking for when it comes to understanding your consumers?
Yeah.
The give us a mini class.
Oh, okay.
A mini class.
First and foremost, and we could regurgitate back the definition
Mhm.
of consumer behavior, but we don't need to do that. I think the reality is consumer behavior is understanding what are the actions your consumers are going to take and why. That starts with understanding who they are and
Mhm.
trying to be broad enough to have a large enough target audience, but narrow enough that you can actually act on it.
Mm.
And that varies depending on the size of the company you're at. In a really large company, your consumer segment might be 50% of the US population. In a smaller company, you might be purposefully more targeted because your budget is slightly different. So knowing and understanding the actions you want your consumer to take and trying to figure out how to steer them in that direction. And then what do you look for? Well, you want to know demographically, behaviorally, and psychographically, who is that customer? So, demographically, how old are they? Where do they live? How do you physically target them? Do they have a family of 2.2 kids? Whatever it is. Behaviorally, what are the actions they do? In this category, what do they do when they're looking for entertainment options?
Hmm.
Do people watch full matches? Do they watch highlights mostly? Where do they do it? Do they follow us on social? Do they go to the Apple Sports app? I'm making it up. How do they behave towards this category? And then lastly, how do they feel? How does our product make them feel? How does entertainment as a category make them feel? Where is the white space for us to show up and incite a feeling that is positive and unlike any other in the market? And as we were describing, what is that MLS energy? That idea that it's fun, it's grounded in momentum, it's grounded in this feeling of welcoming, it's
Mm.
grounded in the feeling of quality soccer. That work to define that, we learned all of that by trying to really study and understand demographically who's our consumer, behaviorally, what do they do, and how do they want to make them feel?
Can you share a moment where you understood consumer behavior? And this could be at MLS or in any of your previous roles, where you really understood some consumer behavior and how you translated that into a marketing initiative or a campaign that you're really proud of.
I can talk about my first MLS Cup, which was last year, December 8th, I believe.
Hmm.
I had the opportunity to sit in a couple of different places. I was spending some time with my team who were sitting sort of throughout the stadium. And I was with one of my team members and a partner that he had brought along. And we were sitting behind this family of father looked like a young teenage girl and her younger brother. They were up out of their seats cheering as LA was inching closer and closer to winning the match. And when they won, the teenage girl started crying.
Mm.
She said, "I've never seen anything like this." I'm totally eavesdropping on this very
Yeah, of
private.
course. That's what you should do as a CMO. The best
And
way to get consumer insights.
I'm the mother of a daughter. My daughter is 5, but I imagine when she's a teenager, I'll be so lucky to get her to go to anything with me, right?
Hmm.
To see a teenager with her family in tears, so wrapped up in the emotional moment. What I learned from that is our product means something to people.
Mm.
It creates a feeling that families need and crave, and people need and crave. It creates a bond or a place of unity that you otherwise may not have in your relationship with someone or in the world as a whole. But it is about a feeling. And so during the same time, we were finalizing that brand positioning work, and we intentionally focused on this idea of a feeling coming out of that moment because that is what we do. We make people feel something.
Mm.
And not every brand can do that, by the way.
Yeah.
Again, credit cards, checking account, pharmaceutical products.
They
Those
can make
things,
you feel safe. They can make you feel secure,
true,
right?
but they don't incite the tears of
Mhm.
joy, hug to your father as a teenager. Maybe you wouldn't be caught dead doing that in public, right? Something about the feeling that this product ignites that's so powerful and so positive.
You have had such a diverse career. You've been, as you said, a management consultant. You've worked in consumer product. You've worked at, credit card companies, now MLS. What has been the woven thread for you in your career as you've navigated going into these new opportunities?
To your point, I've been really lucky to work in a number of different industries and a number of different types of settings. And I think it always comes down to people. That is the red thread. If you can figure out how to not only build the right team, but take pleasure in working with that team every day,
Mm.
that's how you make going to work fun. And for me, I think there's maybe 3 things. Number 1, having a culture of care.
Mhm.
Unabashedly, even if it's not the culture of the company, focusing on that.
Mhm.
Say thank you. Having forums to gather and have fun, celebrating each other, getting to know each other. That's a really important thing I've learned that not only can make you successful, but like just be a human and make you want to come to work every day. You'll have someone to talk about your weekend with. For me, that's really important. Coupling that with a high performance culture, look, being nice also doesn't mean that you slack off on achieving your goals, right?
Absolutely.
So making sure that people have quantitative goals, you have regular check-ins, you have regular feedback against those goals, and you can deliver all of that feedback in a really kind and constructive way. But feedback is a gift. Building a high performance team will serve you in your current role, but it will serve every person on your team who's better off for it in their next role and their role after that.
Hmm.
And I think that in every job I've had, if you can figure out how to build a culture of care and couple that with a high performing team, that's how you become successful.
What are the skills that you think have also contributed to your success?
The most important thing I will say, most important skill is resilience.
Hmm.
Some days you win, some days you
Totally.
lose. I'm having a medium day right now. I can calibrate in the middle of the day almost every day and tell you, am I up or am I down? Today I'm like in the middle somewhere.
Yep.
I think resilience is about, it's very clear, 3-step process. Control what you can, adapt to the situation, so change your expectations, change your approach, be flexible, and never, never, never give up. Resilience, and by the way, that sort of like mindset to become resilient and that clear formula has served me well, really well over the last 10 years. I'll tell you, it's also a skill I've had to build up. And some days it's hard, but some days you have that well of knowing exactly how to do it. 3 steps: control what you can, adapt to the situation, don't give up. And if I know that, and I know that's the way to move forward, I know it's worked for me in the past, that skill will serve you everywhere you go, any industry, any group of people.
One of my old bosses, the president of Sweet Green, Karen Kelly, she wrote me a note inside of a Dr. Seuss book, which was The Places You Will Go. And inside of it, one of the things she wrote was that my mental fortitude was one of my best skills and would carry me far. And I couldn't agree more with your perspective on resilience, right? As leaders, as entrepreneurs, as creatives, as individuals, as mothers, as women, as partners, life is going to constantly throw obstacles at you. And we have this saying at Fahrenheit. It's from one of our Set the Tones, which is this weekly sort of mantra that we bring to the team and we debate and we discuss. Says there is no utopia. And it's this idea that there is no perfect moment. There is no perfect day. There is no perfect project. There is no everything is working in harmony and in a rhythm and it will just stay there forever. Because the likelihood is that the moment that you get to that place, something else breaks, something else falls apart, something else is wrong. And it is our job and it is our duty in some ways to navigate that change. And to navigate our relationship to that change takes resilience. And it takes this unwavering, I think, commitment to enjoying the good, solving the bad, right? Navigating those tough moments as much as you're enjoying the good ones. And so I think it's such an interesting thing that, in these conversations that we constantly are having at Fahrenheit and on the Fahrenheit podcast with leaders, resilience keeps coming up as something that is so important, right? It's not this idea of hitting the moment of perfection or everything being perfectly in a bow. It is about navigating the challenges with that strength, with that clarity, with that conviction, with that resilience.
You and I, both in New York, we're in Midtown. And oftentimes I walk up to Bryant Park with my daughter on the weekends and we ride the carousel and we always walk past the library lions outside the New York Public Library. And in the 1930s, the mayor at the time, Fiorello LaGuardia, said he named the lions. He named them patience and he named them one patience, one fortitude. And at the time, it was like, these are the skills New Yorkers need or the qualities New Yorkers need to get through the Great Depression. But these are the qualities we all need, right?
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. And it's not meant to be like a depressing thought. It's just like so much of life, whether it's parenthood, whether it's work, it's about patience and fortitude. And I tell my daughter that. She's only 5. So like it lands or it doesn't. Mostly it doesn't yet. But like these are the qualities. Look, the library lions are named after the 2 most important qualities. Sometimes it lands.
I love that message. Patience, fortitude, great communication, trust in your team.
That's
Thank
right.
you so much for this conversation. I've taken so much from it. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
me.
of course. Really wonderful. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fahrenheit podcast. If you loved this episode, learned something new, or made you think differently, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts. See you next time.